Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, I am so loving the theme of this month on the podcast. We're talking all about reemergence and what that actually means to you on a physical level, a spiritual level, and beyond. Let's talk about our sexual level as well. And I actually want to talk about how to reawaken your sexy side. Because let's be real, the last couple of years, we have all kind of gone into a bit of a cocoon, both physically and metaphorically. And it's time to reemerge, time to remember who our true self is deep, deep, deep down inside. So, my special guest today is Jolie Dawn. She is the author of Empowered, Sexy, and Free, and she's also the creator of the Dare to Prosper Challenge, which is the largest women's prosperity meditation gathering online that is intended by women in more than 50 countries around the world. She's an intuitive business coach and writer, and she specializes in helping women awaken their prosperity consciousness, embody their deepest truth, and reclaim personal freedom and creativity. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Jolie Dawn. Hey, Jolie.
Hi, Mary. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I am so thrilled because I think this is going to be a fun conversation. I really want to go deep here.
I'm ready for it. Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. So I think maybe the first things first is we got to kind of lay some foundation work to talk about this because let's face it, like some of us, men, women, non-binary, otherwise, can find the subject of being sexy very triggering, right? And so I also want to create a safe space for us to kind of talk through some of that stuff that may be the junk hiding in our recesses of our closets too, right?
Exactly. I'm here for it.
Yeah. So let's start first things first. How would you define sexuality? What is it? And more importantly, what is it definitely not?
To me, sexuality is our capacity to feel pleasure and aliveness and that life force energy of creation in the body. And sexuality is definitely not a prescribed set of rules that is one size fits all. It is so unique to your individual desires. It is so your self-expression, your own unique blueprints. And just because sexuality looks one way for somebody else doesn't mean that that resonates for you.
And is there a difference between sexuality and sexiness in your mind?
To me, sexuality is the expression of your sex, the expression of that internal desirability and that attraction, that magnetic force. And to be sexy is to wear that desirability. It is a sense of feeling. It is a sense of confidence. It's a sense of that aliveness in the body.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's so much so that you named your book Empowered, Sexy, and Free. I imagine there's three of elements that are all part of this big equation, right? Why is empowerment and being free important?
I wrote the title that way, those three words. It came to me many, many years ago, empowered, sexy, and free, because this word sexy, so much of my spiritual awakening and my own personal development had to do with healing sexuality and reclaiming it for myself and realizing that so many people outside of myself had a set of rules around my sex and sexuality, whether it's the church or society or culture or a way that a woman should be, or in my own internal family culture. There was so much around it, so much that was expected of me and not expected of me, that it was a huge part of my empowerment journey and my own inner freedom journey was to reclaim that. Like, this is what sexuality means to me. This is my unique expression. And it is still a constant journey and unfolding.
Yeah. And, you know, I really resonated with your book and your story as well and your journey, because I'm Christian as well and was raised in a Methodist church as a child. And, you know, you're right. There are certain stigmas inside organized religion about sex. And, you know, sex is between a man and a woman, and it should only be during marriage. And, you know, if you're not doing it these exact ways, then you're doing it wrong, basically. Was the message I heard a lot. And I don't know about you, but when you tell a kid they're doing it wrong or that they are not supposed to do something, it makes you kind of want to do it more, right?
Yeah. Out of all the rules in my family culture between my mom and my dad, the number one golden rule of following Christ was do not have sex before marriage. And my parents were like, they took that one thing and made it so like such a big deal. And it became this forbidden fruit, and it became this thing that I rebelled against. And because I was in so much rebellion of that rule, I had a lot of very unsafe things happen in my reality, my world, because I didn't know boundaries. I didn't know what sex was. I didn't have the education. And so just the education of don't do it wasn't sufficient for a very curious, sexually expressed being that I was.
Yeah.
Probably other kids it works for, but it wasn't a match for me and whatever spirit I came into this body with.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of those out there listening to us right now can resonate with that to some certain degree, especially in kind of our generation. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s or so, or even the early 90s, you kind of were in a different era. I like to believe that as a parent now, my kids are 11 and 13 at the time of this recording. We talk about this stuff. I would never in a million bazillion years imagine talking about this stuff with my parents when I was a kid. So there has been some positive evolution to talk about things a little bit more openly rather than kind of shoving them in underneath the rug or worse, steaming them with deep shame and guilt, right?
Exactly. And thank you, Mary, for being the mother that talks to your children about this. It's just setting them up to win in life. To all the parents that are listening that are willing to get uncomfortable because you didn't do this with your parents, so you're having to learn it for the very first time, and just so much respect to that.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to actually read a little bit from your book, if you don't mind. Chapter 7, you say this. It's page 149. I'm going to be real with you here. It took a whole new level of bravery for me to put this story out to you. For so long, my sexuality was a deep root of pain and shame, confusion and wrongness, and embarrassment. I did not think I was beautiful, did not think I was worthy, I did not think I was desirable. The shame that I had in my body around my sexuality, around sex, around my sexual history was crushing. This is the result of trauma stored in my body, years of judgment and disgust that I had for myself. Over time, I made a full 180 turn from those feelings. I'm happy to say that today I truly love being in my body and I feel integrated with my sexual past. I've worked hard to reclaim my sexual innocence. And yet, even with hundreds and hundreds of healing work done behind me, writing about my past was incredibly confronting. And I bet the same is for you. Maybe you've been through a similar journey of loving yourself and owning your sexuality. Maybe you're partway into it and maybe you're just starting. I want to talk about this. And first off, thank you, because it's so vulnerable and raw to share something like that in a book and then go, okay, now I'm telling the world about this. This is a big deal. But I'm so curious because I think a lot of people, when they think, I need to reclaim my sexuality, I need to be more sexy in life, I need to be more, and I need to be more promiscuous, and I need to be more. But what you actually point to is it's a reclaiming of your sexual innocence. Tell me why that's the important thing to focus on.
Thank you for reading that piece. It brings me back to the state that I was in when I wrote that, and the message that I just care so much to stand for in readers and listeners is that this is an internal journey. It's a journey between us and ourselves and what it feels like and confidence. And I'll give you a recent example, which is for the first time ever in my life, I took up pole dancing. And I had to work through so many feelings of being awkward, and this is not my thing, and oh my gosh, what do I look like? And this dance class that I'm in continually invites you into, it's not about how you look, it's about how you feel, because when you feel sexy, that's what looks sexy. So trying to perform and do a thing for somebody else is often what we've been taught that sex is performance, is display. And the innocence of this is to reclaim your sexual innocence is to know that there is such a purity in your desire to be turned on in relationship with bodies and in life in general, to look around your life and to be turned on for this creation that it is. It takes such a big sense of worth and deserving to say, this is my design. I get to have it exactly the way that I want it. I get to have exactly the sex that I desire, get to have the home and the environment that I desire. And I want to look around my life and feel in my body this joy and this awe of who I've been to create this.
Yes.
So the innocence of this is we oftentimes think that we're doing something wrong and my body has changed over the years and I'm just not good at this thing. And there's so many judgments we put on ourselves to make this feeling of turn on wrong. So many people struggle with this feeling of not being turned on by their life. Like it's stagnant, it's repetitive, it's oftentimes boring. And I love that she wanted to bring this conversation because it's sometimes all we need to do is remember to come across a podcast like this between Mary and Jolie, to have this moment of remembrance of like, it can feel good.
Yes.
And I can book that vacation for myself and I can see my kids smiling and happy and feel this lightness. And if I've gotten into this rut in life, I can take action to shake things up so I can feel that turn on in my body.
Yes. And pleasure is not a sin. I mean, if you truly believe in God and a higher power, I think God created us specifically like this to, experience pleasure. And so I think you have to flip it on its head a lot of times because we put up a lot of barriers that keep us from experiencing a whole life, which is full of pleasure and excitement too, right?
I'm with you on this one, Mary. Like our creator, our God, whatever is the designers behind this whole experience wants us in our joy and pleasure.
Yes.
We have these very sentient bodies that can receive so much pleasure for a reason. And the innocence is feeling deserving of that and knowing that you are whole and perfect and complete just as you are and not missing anything in order to have to be deserving of love.
And that's it, right? So I think that this is where we have to kind of step out of the rat race of life and culture as well. Because I think culture will tell you, either through your Facebook ads or the billboards you see or the media you consume, to say, well, if you just buy this, if you just look like this, if you just make this change or sculpt this part of your body or blah, 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 blah. It's always externally focused to achieve what we're talking about here. And I think what's really important, if you take nothing else away from the conversation today, is about going internal and that acceptance on a true level. And this is the thing, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on it, Jolie, because, a lot of people talk about like body positivity these days and self-love and all of that. And that is a big leap for some of us, right? That instead, what if we just got to body neutrality, not shame, not super positive, but just taking a step towards body neutrality. Like this is the body and the vehicle you've been given. And maybe that's a step towards, actually getting to self-love. What are your thoughts there?
Oh my gosh, I love this conversation. Body neutrality. Yes. Let us normalize body neutrality and not making it have to be a thing. And I was just scrolling on TikTok and somehow I got served this trend of women getting surgical breast reductions. And I happen to be a woman that's where I have a lot of curve in my body. I've always had very full natural breasts. And then what that did to my psyche to see women surgically removing like what was beautiful, to me, normal size breast, to have this like trend of a really small athletic chest, I just immediately clicked the button, not interested. Like, don't keep showing me this stuff because then I'll start to believe that my body is out of trend. Like there's this ideal standard of what this female body looks like. I don't fit that standard. And so let me get surgically reduced in a way, a perfectly healthy body to fit this ideal and this standard. And if I was really taking on body neutrality, I wouldn't subscribe to those norms. I wouldn't make my body needing to be anything other than she is in her divine perfection. Like this is the shape that she's in. I'm not trying to fit any trend. I'm not trying to fit any standard. This is the unique vehicle that I have. And I think in a world that puts so much emphasis on aesthetic, it's like, let's just get down to the basics. This is the vessel. This is the temple that is the home of my spiritual path right now. I get to be in so much celebration that I have a human body to be able to experience this 3D reality, and to be hyper focused on aesthetic and get so obsessive around the way that it looks and is it perfect and do I fit this norm is, I think, really damaging.
Yeah, it can be. And so you talk about in your book, a sexually free woman has 5 distinct characteristics. And I'm just going to rattle them off, and you please go into detail. So the 5 distinct characteristics of a sexually free woman are these. She loves her body. She has healthy boundaries. She honors her no with no need for explanation. She faces her past and seeks healing. And she embodies her unique expression of sexy. Tell me more.
I love these sections that you're pulling from the book. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll speak on the one with honors her boundaries with no need for explanation. I think that when things in a culture are widely accepted and you are different than that thing, people are like, why are you different? Like being the one person in the friend circle in college that doesn't choose to drink. It's like, what's wrong with you? Did you have alcoholic parents? It's like, actually, no, that's just not what is good for my body. And I feel like, especially as women, just speaking to the ladies out there in this, there's been so much programming and just unconscious, subtle messaging around like we give our body as our offering, and we the pressure that we feel to give this body to somebody else. And so honoring the boundaries with no explanation is like, I'm in a season of, this is what's true for me. I'm in a season of celibacy. I'm in a season of having more casual sex. Whatever that is for you doesn't need an explanation from somebody else if it is your truth.
And that is such a drop the mic moment to really integrate. No does not need a further explanation. And I think I can only speak for myself. I remember when I was a teenager and in my 20s, and I started to develop curves and all of a sudden develop eyeballs on me, attention that not always was warranted or wanted. I didn't know what to do with it. And so I think when you mix that with a people pleaser mentality, sometimes saying no is really hard. I remember that being very challenging for me in regards to sexiness and, forwarding off advances that I just didn't want. So I would just go with the flow and whatever. But I think it is so true. And I think that your body is listening to you when you say yes, but you actually mean no. It builds up this distrust between your spirit and your body too, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. The personal trust you have with yourself is, am I going to protect you?
Yes.
Am I going to honor that no? Because I'm the only one that can. This is the one thing that I do have complete sovereignty and power of in this lifetime is myself and this body. So one thing that I know that I can express clear boundary. I can't control somebody outside of me, but I can with this body. Yeah. And after a 5-year end of 3 long-term relationships, it took me truly an entire year of being single to repair that trust in myself, because there were so many times I said yes when I meant no, just wanting to be caretaker, wanting to show up, wanting to give of myself. And I'm just coming off that year-long experience of traveling and being selfish with my time and doing exactly what I want to do. And I can start to just now feel like really strong in myself and really sovereign and really trustworthy that I will protect my energy and protect myself. I definitely have the pleaser codes in me of just like really somewhere deep down there my inner little girl believes that she needs to do something and perform to receive love.
Yes.
And that's not a good pattern to show up in relationships because you can end up very depleted.
Yeah. And the key word you said there was sovereignty, which basically means, you have sovereign control over your body and the choices you make. And that may mean the food and drinks that you ingest. It may be the clothes that you wear on your body. It may mean who you surround yourself with and which phone calls you do return and which ones you don't. And I think, sometimes it seems so obvious. especially when we talk about it in sort of a third person, like, people should be more aware of their sovereignty. But then we forget it when it comes to us, right?
I love this word, sovereignty, and what that means as a practice. And we all get to be so graceful with ourselves as we're not going to get it perfect all of the time. I don't feel sexy all of the time, even though I've been on this journey for a very long time. And there's a commitment that I have with myself that even when I say yes when I meant no, or I say no when I meant yes, and I have to rebuild a trust in myself, that there's a practice that I have of listening and self-compassion.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to change gears a little. In your book, you talk about being a creatrix in your own life. That's a new word for me. So why don't you define what that means and how do we do it?
The creatrix is a woman who creates her intentional reality. There's intention in everything. The creatrix knows that within her body, whether she has a physical womb or not, and whether she has children or not, by being a woman, she has the codes of reproduction and the creation of all human life within her body. She has access to that code, that design. So we are powerful creatrixes. We have the capacity to bring something that is completely non-physical, just dream, something so intangible, and bring it to this 3D world. Yeah. And so to activate the creatrix energy is a lot about the solar plexus chakra, the solar plexus and the sacral, that place in the center of your belly, that gut instinct. And then the sacral chakra being that place of reproduction, your womb, either physical or energetic. And how do we utilize the energy in the body, this thing that we're already naturally good at, to call upon the divine feminine to bring your dreams into creation?
And so what stops us from doing that?
What stops us is, the formula for me is be, do, have. The state of being first is practicing the having, practice the energetics of success, practice prosperity before the money hits your bank account. That state of being informs the action. Action is necessary. In this 3D world, we must take action from an aligned place. And when our state of being informs our action, we're going to have way more leverage. We're going to have way more success. So, for example, if a woman is taking a journey to start her business and she's like, I have this idea for this healing business, or maybe it's a podcast that I want to start, any sort of creative project. Let's take the business example. If she starts first with the state of being, practicing, what would I be doing right now as a successful businesswoman? How would I be waking up in the morning? How would I be nourishing my body with food? How would I be creating boundaries with my most needy friends that are going through their breakups or whatever is going through their personal lives? And so practicing a woman in her professionalism, how does she greet the day? How does she greet her body? Then that state of being, the energetics of that inform her actions. So maybe she does her 2-hour morning routine before she opens her computer. Maybe she stays disciplined to her calendar and follows through on the reach out and the marketing and the writing that she was going to do that day. I had to have a massive breakthrough in my relationship with discipline to get to where I am as a business owner, because I was in so much rebellion to work. I was in so much all I wanted was my free time, and I wanted to lay on the beach and I wanted to travel, and I couldn't find that gritty nature within me that would do the thing and do the work and push through the moments of discomfort in order to have the results. And so the action then informs the having. So it's be, do, and then have. And we only get to experience the having after we've put in something for it. And that's the way that the formula works, because anything worth having in this life takes a bit of effort. That's how this whole thing works. And to receive things without the effort is not quite the juice. To make it to the top of the mountain, being lifted there by a ski lift, although convenient, is so much different than having climbed that mountain yourself.
100%. And journey versus destination, it's all the things. I just wonder sometimes in the real world that we are all in, we get triggered though. It's all well and good, and we're headed down. We know where we're headed, and we're going down the journey, and we feel like we're building momentum. And then someone or something totally triggers us, right? So tell me, what are the 4 things to consider when we do get triggered that's going to help us deflect it, but also, more importantly, recover fast so we get back on track?
I know this can be like annoying spiritual advice when you're in a trigger, but there is always, always, always a gift, especially when it's extremely uncomfortable. And our willingness to find the gift quickly will inevitably reduce the pain. So, for example, I was holding space for a friend the other day. She got a surprise $20,000 tax bill. And there's nothing quite like the dysregulation of a surprise tax bill because it is very real and it is money that you must pay. And either you set that money aside or you didn't.
Yes.
And she was having this moment of like, my numbers are disorganized and like just how hard she was being on herself and how dysregulated she felt. And the advice that I gave her was like, there is still a scarcity wound here. There is still this feeling deep within you of like, where did I mess this up? And where am I not enough? And let's remove all of the story about how wrong you are, and let's look at a creative solution. Because what tends to happen specifically with scarcity is as scarcity increases, creativity decreases.
Yes.
And that's true with a lot of things. As fear increases, our peace decreases in the body. So I said, without any of the story about how wrong you are or disorganized or whatever, about any of that story, what's true is a $20,000 tax bill. Now, if we get creative, can we reduce that tax bill? What's the payment plan? Like, let's come up with a solution that works, because robbing your joy and robbing your energy isn't actually going to bring us to the outcome of the solution that we desire.
Right. And when that happens, if you get sucked down into it for too long, your spirit, your energy, your just changes, and how you show up in the world changes. And so it's almost a double-edged sword. Like, you show up contracted and, defeated or deflated, and other people see that and they go, I'm just going to leave her alone. I'm not going to bother her, or I'm not going to ask her about, being part of this opportunity or doing this thing with me or working on a collaboration. And then it sort of serves itself, right? It's just like, so it is a matter of recovering as fast as possible, not, ignoring it or pretending like it doesn't exist, but working through the process of acknowledging it, feeling it, and choosing a new thought, right?
Yeah. And there are some times where we can be logical and think our way through it. Like, okay, here's the strategy and here's the plan. And there's some times where the logical strategy doesn't actually make the body feel better. And we have to stop and emotionally process and move our body and burn and sweat or give it to the earth or have a little rage expression to move it from the body. Because sometimes thinking it the way through can be like, okay, I can be rational about this. I'm going to move on. And then there's those times where it's like truly an emotion that lives in the body that can only be shaken up through moving and processing through it.
Yeah. And that reminds me of a conversation I had recently with Serena Hicks. She talks all about big, happy money, and she helps people move through their money blocks. 100%. And you even, you talk about kind of different journaling exercises you can do if you find you are hitting up against a block when it comes to money issues, like writing a letter to money and what you want to declare as a new relationship with it. And also writing a letter from money back to you. Like, what does money need to tell you? Because I think there might be some blinders on it that where you keep coming up against the same challenge, the same situation or scenario, but different times. It's because it hasn't been processed. It hasn't been healed. It hasn't been declared, has it?
Mary, one of the things I look back on my spiritual development journey and what a seeker I've been, and one of the things I feel most grateful that I did for myself was facilitate a prosperity awakening, because I came from a really rough background with money and lots of poverty, scarcity codes, and you're a noble person if you just have barely enough. So it took me a very long time to see myself deserving, but the life that I live because of the prosperity that's around me. And it's so much more than just my bank account. I make great money. I'm great with money. I'm a great investor, but it's so much about the practice and the feeling of enoughness in the world that will tell us you never have enough. And to feel like to be able to receive, because I'm living on this property in the island of Kauai on acres of the most lush land you can imagine, a 500-acre nature reserve behind my house with waterfalls. It's paradise.
Yeah.
And I still notice the mind's tendency to make this the new norm and just get used to it. Like what would be a vacation of a lifetime to somebody to be in this estate starts to become your day to day, and you start to miss things. And I'm in commitment with myself to not miss this. Like this is a very special experience that I'm having. Receive this prosperity that has landed. So my practice is a feeling of spaciousness and more than enough with my prosperity, with my time. This is a new one I've been working on recently, is like this contraction around feeling like I'm chasing time and the deadlines are always just a little bit too close. And I'm always trying to push things around and
yes,
fighting for my time. I've been doing a lot of meditation recently on like timelessness, and there's more than enough time for me. And I'm not going to subscribe to this feeling of rush and pushing towards something, because it is all a mental concept. Time is a mental concept, just like money is a mental concept. And the way that you get yourself free from these mental constructs is the same way you got into them, is through the mind.
Yes. And changing the relationship you have with both of those things. And I think that when I sit in a space of scarcity or panic, that the money's not coming in, or I don't have enough time, or that I'm not enough, it's such a low vibration to live in. And I think that it's just such a different place when you go, well, what if this could be ease and flow, and there is grace involved, and you flip the not enough to more than enough. It changes the flavor altogether, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just that practice alone, I have more than enough. I have all my needs met. That's a great place to start for anybody who's feeling in scarcity and would even be possibly triggered by this conversation of like, yeah, Jolie has more than enough, but how can I feel prosperous when bills are due and my kids need school pictures and whatever the thing is, whatever the need is? It's the practice of an internal state, an energetic of having, and an energetic of spaciousness.
Yeah. And, let's face it, the last few years have been a lot of an energy of enduring, surviving, just getting by. Let's just figure it out until it goes back to quote unquote normal, right? That we've kind of gone through this pandemic that we've never experienced before. Not one of us in this generation has ever had this type of experience. So it's going to take some time to, as you said earlier, like build that trust again inside you, but externally with the world itself. Like, how can we live prosperous lives instead of sitting in that kind of enduring and surviving energy?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, survival. Just one more week of mandates and not travel and all of the things. It's a lot of people. What was a source of love in their lives and connection, which is such a huge part of the human happiness experience, was drastically altered overnight. The ways that people and communities connected and the world as we knew it changed hugely. Like you said, it's historic. And there's a healing that gets to happen. And the inner little girl or inner little boy inside of us, that all they want to do is have fun with their friends and be free. And it's felt like a lockdown after a lockdown and a no after a no and all kinds of new rules. I would just invite anybody who's still feeling the aftermath of that to be so gentle with yourself and to know that that still requires healing and space to bring back the love and connection that once was there.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking about later this week, I'm headed down to South by Southwest, a massive conference in Austin, Texas. I'm speaking at it this year. And, I haven't been to a massive conference since 2019. And so for part of me, I'm totally excited. I can't wait to get around lots and lots of people. And there's still also a part of me that's like, ooh, lots and lots of people. I'm not sure if I'm completely ready for it. But what I hear and what you're saying is grace. It's baby steps. It's slowly, the reawakening of yourself is a slow process. But to be open to allow it, right?
And it's such a perfect example of having a commitment to yourself in the environment of there's going to be undoubtedly big demands on my energy, lots
Yes.
of very enticing and compelling invites. And
Yes.
my commitment is to myself through this entire experience. My commitment is to myself and to be so fine tuned to the subtleties of my yes. That is my commitment for this event.
Yeah. So I want to take a kind of a left turn here and go a little bit deep with you. You talk about this concept called sex magic in your book. Now, how do we begin to unlock this super powerful energy and how we show up in our work and in our lives?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this. I am so turned on by this subject. And you're the first podcast host that's ever asked me. So I feel joy of being able to speak on this right now because it's been a huge part of my success journey. So if we go back to this formula that I talked about, be, do, have, this state of being the foundation of everything. And if we could get to know our state of being, if we are turned on and connected to the huge superpower of the body, which is the state of orgasm, and how open the body is, every single cell and gland and receptor. I mean, that is a huge activation for the body to be in the state of orgasm. And what's actually happening in the brain at that state is a high malleability and flexibility. And so getting connected to these big goals. And so the way that I would do sex magic is in my self-pleasure practice, bringing myself to really big states of pleasure and heightened orgasmic states, and to be thinking about and to invite in my big goals. So whatever current launch that I'm working on, and this isn't every time, this is in very specific rituals that I have dedicated to. This is what I want to feel around this launch. I want to feel expanded. I want to feel turned on. I want to feel sexy. I want to feel like I've just got it. I want to feel pure confidence. And I would take that intention into a self-pleasure practice and bring it into my orgasmic practice so I could invite it into my body, feel it land in my body. This is one of these great mindset hacks, because what maybe once felt like overwhelming and deadline and rushing and just another launch and all of the tasks and to-do lists, I invite that into a pleasure practice, and all of a sudden my body now relates to it differently. Now it's fun. Now it's a game that I'm playing. Now I'm the creator of the rules and this is my domain. And so you can do this in partnership. My recommendation is, if you're doing this with your partner, that they know about it, that this is something that is consensual, that you will be thinking about this thing or this project or this creative pursuit while using this sexual energy in your body.
Yeah. And, who doesn't love an orgasm? Let's just say that. It's a wonderful gift that your body is giving you. And I just love this idea so much, because I think the times where I have felt mentally or creatively blocked, this is the exact energy to interject into it to shake things up, right?
Exactly. It's exactly that, to shake things up. If you're feeling dry and depleted and parched in your creativity, if you really do an intentional ritual, it's I'm going to juice this body up. I'm going to get activated and alive, and I'm going to tap into that central nervous channel of my Kundalini energy, my life force energy, that which shoots up my spine and brings life force to my body, Shakti, we can call it even. And taking that with your creative projects. I'm not the creator of sex magic. I have my own ways in doing it. I'm not even the creator of that word. I'm not sure where that word came from, but there's a lot of magic to be harnessed from our sexual superpowers.
Yes. And even on the flip side, if you've been feeling depleted and neglected, or a feeling of unworthiness, you've got a big dream, but you're I don't know, am I qualified enough? Am I doing enough? Am I, in the right place enough? This is also bringing that energy back to home, and you're the home. And I love this so much. I hope that anybody that's listening to us today is inspired. The pleasure isn't a quickie. It's something that you take time and feel in all parts of your body, through your breathing, your touch, your taste, your smell, all the things that it does bring you a sense of wholeness and pleasure on a deeper level.
Bringing all the five senses. Exactly, Mary.
Yeah. Well, if this is enticing and intriguing you, I highly recommend check out Jolie's book. It's called Empowered, Sexy, and Free. Discover your unique brilliance and dare to be the creatrix of your life. It's available now at your local bookstop around the corner or somewhere online if you are interested in picking it up. And it might be just the thing you need this season to, again, just shake things up a little and think about things in a slightly different way, especially as the world is reopening right now. And more importantly, now that you are reemerging as well. So Jolie, I have a few questions to ask you as we wrap up that I like to ask everyone. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
So my first question for you is this. Tell me, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
I'm reading a book called The Gene Keys, and it maps the spectrum of human consciousness. I'm currently hosting a book club around it at my home, and it's so enlightening. It's written by a poet named Richard Rudd, and it's really supporting my path of awakening and this kind of advanced, nuanced education around the human condition.
I love it. I haven't heard of this book. Hey, we'll link this book up in the show notes for you guys. Everything we talked about today, you can find over at the simplifierspodcast.com. So yeah, if you guys are curious about that, you can find it there. So tell me, who is one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, that you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
I'm really inspired by a woman named Jenner Linden. She has a community called The Wild Ones, and her website is thewildones.community. And she's created this thriving community of hundreds of people, and they all come together to learn about holistic wellness through body and mindset and spirituality. And just this community that she's been able to create online is so inspiring.
I love it. Well, we will link her in the show notes as well. So tell me, I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what's one thing you're grateful for today?
I feel really grateful to live this life and to be a guest on this island of Kauai and to be living this winter that I'm living with the sun shining and free diving and swimming with the whales. I'm just so immersed in nature in an all new way, and it's just fueling me greatly at this time in my life.
So beautiful. So again, if you want to find Jolie and the work that she does out in the world, you can go to her website, joliedawn.com, and all of her social media handles and her website. Again, you can find that over at our show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. So Jolie, my last question for you today is this. Someone somewhere in the world is listening to you and I right now, and she is feeling that momentum in her life to reemerge, to reawaken her sexy side and to really come back to center. But it's a little bit scary. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I would remind you that it's okay to be scared and excited at the same time. It can be really confronting and triggering, and you can feel awkward about it, and you can feel very curious, enticed, and drawn in, and allow both of those things to be true and to not let the fear or the what if sabotage that curiosity that you have within you.
And just do it.
And just do it. Go for it.
Big love to you, Jolie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.